I'm Bable Jonathan, and this is the 6 p.m. primetime newscast on Equinoxe Television, live from our headquarters in Cameroon's economic capital, Douala. In our top stories in this edition of the news, tension and uncertainty rising in Chad's capital N'Djamena and the rest of the country following the death of President Idriss Déby Itno. He quits the scene at 68. His death was announced earlier today by the spokesperson of the military. And in Cameroon, the president of the National Episcopal Conference, His Lordship Abraham Kome, Bishop of Bafang, calls for an end to what he qualifies as senseless war in the northwest and southwest regions of the country. He was speaking today during the funeral ceremony of His Eminence Christian Cardinal Tumi at the Douala Metropolitan Archdiocese Cathedral, St. Peter and Paul Cathedral in Douala. It should be noted that His Eminence Christian Cardinal Tumi is one of the persons who stood up fighting for an end to the conflicts in the northwest and southwest regions of the country. And His Lordship Abraham Kome says he hopes that his death will pave the way for an end to the conflicts, the security situation in the northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon. You're welcome. Thank you for joining us on this edition of the newscast on Equinoxe Television. Chad's President Idriss Déby Itno is no more. His death was announced today by the spokesperson of the military, and he dies after winning the presidential election of Sunday, 11th of April 2021 with 78.3% according to provisional results published by the country's independent National Electoral Commission, and he was due to undertake a sixth term in office. He has been in power since 1990, and for the past 30 years he has been the leader of that country, and he quits the scene at 68. Now take a listen to this extract of the spokesperson of Chad's army.
Idriss Déby Itno vient de donner son dernier souffle en défendant l'intégrité territoriale sur le champ de bataille. C'est avec une profonde amertume que nous annonçons au peuple tchadien le décès ce mardi 20 avril 2021 du maréchal du Tchad, Idriss Déby Itno, des suites de ses blessures au front. Ce douloureux événement intervient le jour de la proclamation des résultats provisoires de la CENI qui plébiscite le maréchal du Tchad à la magistrature suprême au premier tour de l'élection présidentielle.
Idriss Déby Itno has been at the front line of the fight against terrorism in the Republic of Chad and in the whole of Lake Chad basin area, in the area in which the terrorists have been operating, notably terrorists from the Nigerian sect Boko Haram and other terrorist organizations. And according to that statement from the spokesperson of Chad's army, he died after sustaining injuries at the battlefront. And now we take you back memory lane into who was Idriss Déby Itno. Innocent has more.
Joining the army in the 1970s while the country was in the grips of a long-running civil war, Idriss Déby threw his support behind Hissène Habré, the head of one of the rebel groups, who was then serving as prime minister and emerged as leader of the Habré's forces. Habré's forces enabled him seize power in 1982 and became president, with Déby recognized at that time as a brilliant military strategist. He was made commander-in-chief of the armed forces. Déby's relationship with Habré starts in April 1989. Déby was accused of plotting to overthrow Habré's government. Forces loyal to him began launching attacks on Habré's troops from his base in Sudan's Darfur region, where he escaped capture to settle. By late 1990, Abri had fled the country and Déby's forces seized N'Djamena, the capital of Chad. Déby suspended the constitution and formed a new government of which he was the head. Déby promised to establish a multi-party democracy and end the lawlessness and conflict that had endured in Chad for so long. A national conference was held in 1993 to establish a transitional government, and Déby was officially designated interim president. In 1996, a new constitution was approved, and Déby was elected president in the first multi-party presidential elections held in Chad's history. The 1996 elections were marked by credible allegations of fraud, however, and when Déby was re-elected in 2001, it was again amidst allegations of widespread voting irregularities. 2005 constitutional referendum that eliminated presidential term limits was denounced by critics as another means of supporting the president's increasingly autocratic rule. Nonetheless, the referendum passed, clearing the way for Déby's re-election in 2006 in a poll that was boycotted by most of the opposition. Déby was re-elected in 2011, again in a poll that was boycotted by the country's most prominent opposition figures. Throughout his presidency, Déby repeatedly faced resistance in the form of coup attempts and rebel activity. In the years after the 2011 election, Déby bolstered his international standing with his leadership in efforts to counter the spread of terrorism perpetrated by Islamist militant groups in the region. Still, there was an unprecedented amount of protests in the months leading up to the April 10, 2016 presidential election, in which Déby faced 13 challengers. Déby was declared the winner, taking almost 62% of the vote amid complaints of fraud from opposition members. Déby's presidential powers were expanded when a new constitution was promulgated in May 2018. The Chad's long-ruling president Idriss Déby Itno was re-elected to a sixth term with 79.32% of the votes cast in the April 11, 2021 election, according to provisional results from the Electoral Commission last Monday.
Idriss Déby Itno's son, General Mahamat Déby Itno, is now set to take over from his father. He's heading military council after the parliament of the country was dissolved and the constitution set aside. All of these in contradiction to, of course, the constitution of the country, notably Article 81 of the constitution, which states that in the event of a vacancy in the presidency of the republic for whatever reason, in the exemption of prerogatives attributed to the president of the republic in Article 85, 88, 95 and 96, power moves to the president of the National Assembly or the first vice in the absence of the National Assembly president. His son, Mahamat Déby Itno, is now set to take over. He is now the new strongman of Chad. Who is he? Immaculate Fogui answers that question in this report.
C'est un secret militaire et puis deuxièmement, ça c'est pas à nous de décider, nous sommes des militaires.
General Mahamat Déby, popularly known as Mahamat Kaka, son of slain President Idriss Déby Itno, studied at the Joint Military Schools of Chad. He later furthered his education at the Military High School of Aix-en-Provence. As soon as he returned home, his father transferred him to the General Directorate of the Security Service for State Institutions. In the month of May 29, he participated in the victorious Battle of Amdam against the rebel coalition led by Timani Edimi in the eastern part of Chad. In 2010, he received command of the Armored Squadron and Bodyguards within the General Directorate of the Security Service for State Institutions. In 2012, he was later appointed to head the number 1 group of the DGSSIE responsible for securing the presidential palace. In 2013, he was appointed to head the post of second in command of the Chadian Armed Forces intervening in the northern part of Mali under the orders of General Omar Bikomo.
Following the death of President Idriss Déby Itno, our correspondent in the far north region of Cameroon, Amadou Dairo, spoke to some Chadian nationals in Marwa, and this is what they said.
Donc nous aimerions un peu aussi qu'il y ait le dialogue entre maintenant la partie civile et puis la section militaire, pour qu'on y ait le dialogue, et puis un civil aussi, ça représente tout ce que nous aimerions aussi, qu'il y ait la paix, la stabilité.
C'était une sortie par la grande porte, comme le disent les opposants tchadiens. Ça serait mieux, mais ici c'est une mort subite. Et du coup, on ne sait pas, est-ce qu'il a préparé, est-ce qu'il y a une personne qui pourra au moins gérer ce pays comme on l'avait souhaité. Et donc c'est une inquiétude encore de ma part, de mon point de vue, c'est une inquiétude encore.
Je n'ai pas cru au départ, mais j'ai fini par la confirmation des réseaux sociaux et autres, j'ai fini par croire. Mais jusqu'à là, sans mentir, je reste sans mots parce que je ne crois pas.
Ce qu'on attend aujourd'hui, vu que nous avons perdu un grand homme de notre cher pays, le Tchad, nous prions Dieu pour que tout soit stable dans notre pays et même en Afrique d'une manière générale, parce que le président, il dit, ne sert pas seulement le Tchad, mais sert presque la majorité de l'Afrique.
Those were some Chadian nationals in Marwa in the far north region of the Republic of Cameroon talking to our correspondent Amadou Dairo. Now, news in the Republic of Cameroon, the wife of first president of the Republic of Cameroon, Amadou Ahidjo, is no more. Germaine Ahidjo died following ill health, and though she is said to have died from an unknown illness, the family is yet to issue a statement. She died while in exile, notably in Dakar, Senegal, where her husband's remains were kept for the past, or have been for the past 30 years. After, of course, he died there, and the president of the Republic of Cameroon, Paul Biya, has been in power for more than 4 decades, and for the time that he has been in power, there have been calls for the repatriation of the mortal remains of President Amadou Ahidjo, but till now that has not happened. And now his wife, Germaine Ahidjo, has also passed on. She died of an undisclosed ailment. Christian Cardinal Tomi has been laid to rest in the St. Peter and Paul Cathedral here in Cameroon's economic capital, Douala. His Eminence Christian Cardinal Tomi died earlier this month, and his funeral ceremony took place today here in Douala. It started yesterday at the St. Peter and Paul Cathedral with a host of bishops from all over the country, and of course administrative authorities who were present, and members of the National Assembly who took part in his funeral ceremony today at the St. Peter and Paul Cathedral. And speaking during that ceremony, the president of the National Episcopal Conference of Cameroon, the Bishop of Bafang in the West region, His Lordship Abraham Kome, said he thinks it is time to end what he calls the senseless war in the northwest and southwest regions of the Republic of Cameroon, and he hopes that the passing on to glory of His Eminence Christian Cardinal Tomi will pave the way. He was one of the persons fighting strongly for an end to the bloodshed, the killings, the destruction in the northwest and southwest regions of the country. We'll come back to his funeral ceremony later in this edition of the 6 p.m. news. Time for us to go back down memory lane and take a look at who was Christian Cardinal Tomi. Innocent as he has more.
A Cameroonian peace icon and highly celebrated prelate, His Eminence Christian Cardinal Tumi Wigan, described by many as a visionary, was born on October 15, 1930 in Kikaikilaki, Bui division of the Northwest region of Cameroon. He did his secondary studies at the diocesan seminaries and at the seminaries of Ibadan, Bodija, and Enugu in Nigeria. From 1969 to 1973, he obtained in Nigeria a teacher's training grade, a University General Certificate of Education at ordinary level in London, a licentiate in theology at the Catholic Faculty of Lyon, a doctorate in philosophy at the Catholic University in Fribourg, Switzerland. He is well versed in his native dialect in Pidgin and Hausa, Latin, English and French. The Archbishop Emeritus of Douala was ordained a priest on April 17, 1966 in Sopot Diocese of Boya, and from 1966 to 1967 carried out his ministry as a parochial vicar in Fiango Kumba. From 1967 to 1969, he was a professor at the Bishop Rogan College Minor Seminary. In 1973, after having studied abroad, he returned to his diocese and was named rector of the Major Regional Seminary of Bambui, Archdiocese of Bamenda. He was also chaplain to the Association of Catholic Dams and was very involved in promoting the ecumenical movement, obtaining much esteem by Presbyterians and Baptists. On December 6, 1979, Cardinal Tumi was elected the first bishop of the Diocese of Yagua, erected the same day. He received episcopal ordination on the 6th of January 1980 in St. Peter's Basilica. During his pastoral care, the local church developed rapidly, enriched with institutions and centers of formation, nursery schools and dispensaries. On April 23, 1982, he was elected Vice President of the Episcopal Conference, and on November 19, 1982, he was promoted to Co-Adjutor Archbishop of Garoua. On March 17, 1984, he was made Archbishop. In 1985, he was elected as President of the National Episcopal Conference of Cameroon until 1991. He was also elected President of the Symposium of Episcopal Conferences of Africa and Madagascar, a position he occupied in 1990 to 1994. His Eminence Christian Cardinal Tumi participated in the 6th General Assembly of the Synods of Bishops in 1983 and in the Extraordinary Assembly of the Synod of Bishops of 1985. President Delegates to the 8th General Assembly of the Synod of Bishops 1990. President Delegates to the Special Assembly for Africa of the Synod of Bishops 1994. He participated in the 2nd Special Assembly for Africa of the Synod of Bishops in October 2009. He became Archbishop of Douala on August 31, 1991 to November 17, 2009, with His Grace Samuel Kleda taking over. Cardinal Tumi participated in the conclave of April 2005, which elected Pope Benedict XVI. He was proclaimed Cardinal by St. John Paul II in the consistory of June 28, 1988. The prelate has been depicted as a visionary who has been one of the frontliner in seeking solutions to the ongoing crisis in Cameroon. In July 2018, he conceived the idea for organization of an all-Anglophone General Conference. This in a bid to heal the Anglophone crisis, though never authorized legally by government, that went ahead to convene a major national dialogue on October 4, 2019, with Cardinal Tumi being part of it. It is worth mentioning, so many books are to his credit, and the most recent is that which he gave an in-depth analysis and solutions to the Anglophone crisis. The Cameroonian
Christian Cardinal Tumi, Cameroon's lone cardinal, a man described by many as a fine pastor, a good servant of God who inspired many, both the young and the old, a man who fought for peace, a man who fought for justice. And Christian Cardinal Tumi never kept his mouth shut, never remained silent in the face of injustice, in the face of violence. He continued speaking and undertaking actions in favor of justice and the restoration of peace in the northwest and southwest regions of the country. And one of the editions of the Inside on Equinoxe Television, he told me that the situation is deteriorating because of government's poor management of the situation in the northwest and southwest regions of the country, and he thinks that dialogue is the only way out. And of course, this should happen between the government and, of course, the other party fighting for the restoration of the independence of former British Southern Cameroons. Take a listen to Christian Cardinal Tumi in this extract.
People in Kumbu did not know what was happening in Beam. When I told them I was in Beam, they said, "What did you go to do in Beam?" I said, I went to witness myself for myself what the army has done in Beam. They don't know. The truth is not publicized.
And there are also reports of looting going on.
Looting by the army, I'm sorry to say it. The looting is by the army. And I think also the killing of some military men gives me the impression that they are not well trained militarily. I cannot understand how a well-trained young military man, how a young man in the village who is not trained can seize the gun from his hand and use it against him. Now the population is the enemy of the army. I can say that.
And the deployment of young soldiers on the ground who just came out of school.
Why the young are not very experienced? And we are told that, this is by hearsay, told that, some high-ranking military people use the occasion to enrich themselves because the government is spending. The government is spending for these operations. The top people do not render account of how the money they were given for this or that operation was spent.
So are you blaming the worsening situation on poor management by the government?
Of course, that is
the
obvious.
President of the Republic, for example, has not been to the northwest or southwest since he started.
That's obvious. The people who should take this are not going to the front to see what is happening. The reality of the situation.
Are you advising President Paul Biya to go to the northwest and the southwest?
Of course. If I were him, I would go to the front to see for myself, to talk to the people. And the people themselves have been calling for it. Take, for example, the refugees in Nigeria. I was in Nigeria during that period, up to the interior of Igbo land, Nowhere. I didn't go to where our refugees are found, but I was told that on the 31st of December, when the president gave his national, political speech, some refugees trekked for 1 hour to a point where they could listen to the president's speech. And they were sorry that even in that he didn't make mention of them. And those were his supporters, members of the CPDM party, women. They trekked for 1 hour to go to a point in Nigeria where they could get clearly the speech of their president. And they were so deceived, they were so disappointed.
Christian Cardinal Tumi has been described as a man who lived for others, never owned a personal bank account nor a luxurious house. During his burial in Douala, cardinals from the African continent and bishops in Cameroon called for the end of the Anglophone crisis in the northwest and southwest regions of the country in order to honor the cardinal who fought hard for the end of the bloodshed, the killings, the destruction of properties going on there in the northwest and southwest regions of the country. And in one of his efforts to bring an end, to find solutions to the crisis, he decided with other persons, leaders of the civil society, and of course some religious leaders, the moderator of the Presbyterian Church in Cameroon, the head of the president of the Baptist Church or the Cameroon Baptist Convention, and of course the imams of Boya and Bamenda respectively, to organize the Anglophone General Conference, in which he intended with the other leaders to bring together all Anglophones to discuss the way out of the Anglophone crisis. But unfortunately that conference never took place. Now for me, Armstrong Standard takes us to the St. Peter and Paul Cathedral, and we're going to see how the funeral ceremony of Christian Cardinal Tumi unfolded today. His report.
An estimated over 100 people are sat present at the St. Peter and Paul Metropolitan Cathedral, Douala, to bid final farewell to His Eminence Christian Cardinal Tumi. Among them, Cardinals Fridolin Ambongo, Archbishop of Kinshasa in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and Philippe Ouedraogo, Archbishop of Ouagadougou in Burkina Faso, who doubles as the President of the Episcopal Conference of Africa and Madagascar. His Excellency Julio Moret, the Pope's representative and the Apostolic Nuncio to Cameroon and Equatorial Guinea, the President of the National Episcopal Conference of Cameroon, Archbishops and Bishops from Cameroon, Gabon, Congo and Togo. In his message, Cardinal Fridolin describes Cardinal Tumi as an exceptional strong believer in the resurrection and an example for humanity, describing him further as a true defender of human dignity and equality. He promised to continue with the fight of Christian Cardinal Tumi. The same reassurance echoed by Cardinal Philippe Ouedraogo, who went a step further to reiterate the call from the Episcopal Conference of Africa and Madagascar for a total ceasefire all over the African continent. He said their call fell in line with the vision of Christian Cardinal Tumi, which centered on a democratic, peaceful and just society. To Monseigneur Abraham's comment, Christian Cardinal Tumi fought hard to see his beautiful vision realized in his country Cameroon, while promising that priests in Cameroon were going to continue the struggle of Christian Cardinal Tumi. Abraham's comment, in the name of the National Episcopal Conference of Cameroon, said that it was time to end the senseless war in the northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon.
Nous arrêtions enfin avec ces guerres inutiles avec lesquelles nous sommes malheureusement en train de nous familiariser.
He continued by saying that it will be the best offer that the country Cameroon could offer for the peaceful repose of the soul of Christian Cardinal Tumi. In the same vein and even on a stronger tone, His Grace Samuel Kleda, Archbishop of the Douala Metropolitan Archdiocese, indicated that a sincere condolence to Christian Cardinal Tumi will be the end of destruction of human lives in Cameroon, an end to nepotism, corruption and division. He, like others, will end by describing.
Coming up, Derek Jato, our correspondent in the southwest region, takes us to his Sangele headquarters of the Bakassi Peninsula, and there he's going to show us the ugly face of underdevelopment.
Where I had my first school Mayor Magdalene Punti of Isangele Council in the Bakassi Peninsula point at what is left of a classroom where she sat years ago for her first school leaving certificate examination, here at Government Primary School Isangele. And other buildings too are facing the same situation, worn out either by nature or by us, humans, as this school head pray for intervention.
It was blown up by tornado, and since then it has not yet been renovated, and I'm calling on the government through BADEP and the council in partner to see if they can help to renovate the dilapidated structure.
At Government Bilingual High School Isangele, the story is different. The contractor had long disappeared.
But the contractor had to abandon the structure. We really have a problem to accommodate the students.
And Isangele Council on its part is struggling with other assignments, and the means too are very limited. COVID-19 is real, and Mayor Magdalene Punti has kept the fight against the pandemic top on her agenda, targeting schools and other social groups for sensitization, and then supervising the COVID-19 test herself.
Yes, we received a sum of 5 million from the minister, and we have bought corona equipment to furnish our villages, both upland and the maritime. And
at the ordinary council session, she voted for the examination and adoption of the administration.
The Rijato reporting there. Now we take you to talking points. Stay with us. We are receiving Tayon Elvis, journalist, political analyst, member of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement, CRM political party. You're welcome.
Thanks very much. And also to add to that, I'm a member of the Coalition for Dialogue and Negotiation with its headquarters in the United States of America, currently canvassing for the dialogue to end the ongoing Anglophone crisis as per se.
And the cardinals from across the African continent added their voices to that of the National Episcopal Conference of Cameroon, notably the President, Bishop Abraham Kome, to say it's time to end the senseless war and honor the memory of Christian Cardinal Tumi, one of the peace crusaders who stood up for peace in the northwest and southwest regions.
Yes, I think the cardinals, they are on track, because you know the crisis has been going on and the government is not willing to do that. That's why you discover that the cardinals are coming together with that kind of communique. Of course, also moving in the same line with what, as I said earlier, with the Coalition for Dialogue and Negotiation, where we have the steering committee, the board of directors, who are all doing all they can. Of course, you know, recently we wrote to the German government, the German parliament rather, when they are supposed to equally take the relay over to the government. We want all stakeholders. That's why you discover that the cardinals are saying what they're saying. We accept that, you know, we need the fight from different angles. So the the Coalition for Dialogue and Negotiation is doing their own part, and the cardinals are doing their own part. At the end of it, all we want is measures that would force the regime in Yaoundé to know that it is overdue for them to get to this conflict. Of course, you could see their reply from the 103 parliamentarians who wrote through the Minister of External Relations to the U.S. Secretary of State, you know, talking about the Anglophone crisis and the measures that are put in place, which are all cosmetic. So at the end of it, what the bishops are saying is quite timely.
It's very timely to put an end to the bloodshed. And in the last incident, about 5 persons, at least 5 persons were killed in Songwa.
Yes, and you know, it becomes controversial. As I said earlier, we have been finding it difficult working on the fact to investigate, because we have 2 different versions that come in. But then, you know, we talk about the characteristics of people who carry out that kind of act. If you look at characteristics of the military, characteristics of the AMBA, it becomes very difficult to ascertain those who could be behind. Now, the government troops say it is AMBA troops, AMBA fighters say it is government troops. But what we understand is that the sporadic killing is something that it calls for questioning, because when you move into an area and kill sporadic, we start asking the questions. Could this be the handwork of the military? Could this be the handwork of the AMBA? But at the end of it, the end result, which is very bad, is the fact that people are dying. That's why you see at the level of the Cameroon Renaissance movement, Professor Maurice Kamto, we had the slogans, end the war in the Northwest and the Southwest. The coalition for dialogue and negotiation is still on that, and we will take all it takes from the steering committee and the board of our directors, including all stakeholders on board, to ensure that whether Yaoundé likes it or not, the killings must come to an end, and people must take their responsibilities.
As you indicated, the situation is actually becoming a little more complex on the ground, with accusations coming from both directions. But you have been on the ground in the northwest as well as in the southwest regions of the country. What have you been seeing? What have you been hearing from the people?
Well, I have been on the ground. Remember, I went to Bengui before the shooting took place. You know, I was caught up between Bamenda and Bengui when there was shooting around Alabukam area with the non-state armed actors and the security forces that protect movement from the whole, that's the whole day, from 6 a.m. right to 7 p.m. in the evening. You know, similarly, I took the tent to Guzang and also to Kukum village out there in Batibo. And surely when I came back, there was sporadic shooting around Bali that also obstructed circulation. So all in all, I said that I've been telling the Yaoundé regime, just like we at the level of the coalition for dialogue, negotiation, Professor Maurice Kamto, we have been telling people that it is time for the war to begin to stop, because, you know, the war has changed its tactic. I must be honest with you, Jonathan. When you see politicians sit up and they tell you that, no, there is no major issues. Now, it is a tactical move. And a tactical move in the guerrilla warfare is more dangerous than a constant war that could take 1 week or 2 weeks.
Constant confrontations.
Constant confrontation. That's what you see. Well, I went to the southwest, you know, in the areas of Manu, you know, there are reports on it. Counter accusations after the road was blocked between Yumojok and Manfi. Now, I went also to Mundemba. It was another scenario. Well, in Mundemba town itself, it was seemingly very okay, just like you come to Boya, where we were there to get over about the issues of the Chiefs Conference and all the like, which was another call for concern. But now, in Mundemba, you could get some security within the central town, but out of the area itself, you talk about Kondo Titi, you talk about other areas, a little bit Toko, you see, it's not very governable as per se. So at the end of it, we thought that it's a call for concern, especially while in Mundemba, we realized that the aspect of democracy is still absent. Like we saw the issue of the Chiefs Conference, where it's the Prime Ministry that determines who becomes the president of the Chiefs Conference, 30,000 francs changing hands, meetings taking place in the night. We all investigated all those kind of loopholes and ironies. We said, the government does not mean business to see people take the bold step to decide their destiny in whatever they do in terms of leadership, amenities, and whatever it will take to make them develop themselves.
And security challenges continue eating up African countries. Right now, we're talking about the Republic of Chad, a neighboring country where there is tension and uncertainty, insecurity rising after the death of President Idriss Déby Itno.
Well, the insecurity we find in Chad, just like we find in the area, the restive areas in Cameroon, is an aspect, those are what we call characteristics of dictatorship. You know, when you stay in power for long, these issues likely come up. And the main thing is that when they come up and you cannot handle, because of the tight-fist nature, it becomes a worry. And that explains why, you know, even in Equatorial Guinea, we had some situations whereby some mercenaries were arrested when they tried to topple Obiang Basogo. So at the end of it, in any dictatorship, that's why we said that instead of you being in power for over 30 years, it's just but simple that take a short time, 2 mandates, 4 or 5 years. After that, you could renew it once, and then you quit the scene. You know that what is keeping Africa is the fact that the colonial powers have a hand on Africa. Of course, they want Africans to fight, so in the course of fighting, they could be tapping the resources, oil, other minerals, and all the like. But then, I think that it's a lesson we are getting from Chad, that even if you are as strong as what, know that if God does not permit you to stay on, someday you will not be having the gods to even breathe the simple air that we have as per se.
And Idriss Déby Itno dies after the National Independent Electoral Commission declared him winner of the last presidential election with over more than 75% of the votes, and he dies barely 24 hours after the election results were made public, the provisional results, in which he was already heading for a 6th term in office after 30 years of rule.
That's why I tell you that when you see French African countries, when leaders say they have won election, it's always questionable. Because if you win, if you have a majority of that kind of election, you're not supposed to get an opposition. The rebels could move from the northeast area, southeast area of Chad, and then move right over to N'Djamena, it means something is wrong. You start asking yourself, where are those majority of the persons who voted you, who cannot stand against the rebels? The same thing in Cameroon, when the president tells you that he has over 72% and all the like, and say, well, Professor Maurice Kamto has about 14% and all the like, you start asking yourself, but in the course of the quagmire Where are the people who said they voted for the said leader? It means something is wrong somewhere, and that's the quagmire we find ourselves in, a kangaroo system of the first order.
Tayon Elvis, journalist, political analyst, member of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement and the Coalition for Dialogue and Negotiation. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks very much as we move over to Banjul over the weekend on Saturday, of course, to pay special homage to Honorable Sop Lazar, and everyone is quite very gripped. But then the bad thing is that we have series of deaths in Cameroon, which does not signal all is well. So indications are that Yaoundé must do the right thing. If not, the Coalition for Dialogue and Negotiation, CRN, and a host of other stakeholders will force Yaoundé regime to do what is right, whether they like it or not.
Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for staying with us. That's it for today. Equinoxe is up next live from Cameroon's political capital, Yaoundé. Stay with us.